Also comes from Bethke Heating and Air Conditioning, installing Mitsubishi electric heating and cooling heat pump systems for older homes.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock. I will call the 8th regular Common Council meeting to order. Will the clerk call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderperson Borst.
Here.
Alderperson Bremser.
Here.
Alderperson Close.
Excused.
Alderperson Decker.
Here.
Alderperson Graveen.
Here.
Alderperson Heidemann. Alderperson Kelly. Alderperson Menzer.
Here.
Alderperson Mitchell.
Excused.
Thank you. Alderperson Perella.
Here.
There are 8 present.
Thank you. If folks could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Alder Borst, is there a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the 7th regular council meeting held on July 6, 2026.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval, state aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Minutes are approved. Next, item 5, resignation, city attorney. She is online. City attorney, can you try one more time?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so for resignations, we have Alex Vanden Heuvel from the Mayor's International Committee.
Thank you. Alder Borst?
I move to accept and file.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Any objections? That is accepted. Item 6, city attorney, confirmation of appointments.
Jacob Wise to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Jamie McDonald to the Board of Zoning Appeals, JJ Montgomery as Harbor Master.
Thank you. Alder Borst?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Mine's not refreshing. There we go. Okay.
8 ayes.
That's approved unanimously. Next, public forum. City clerk?
First person tonight is Mary Lynn Donahue.
And then Mary Lynn, name, address, the item you're speaking on, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mary Lynn Donahue. I reside at 418 St. Clair Avenue in Sheboygan. I am speaking tonight to ask that you adopt the temporary data center development moratorium. This 12-month moratorium, approved unanimously by the Plan Commission on July 14th, gives the city the time necessary to develop a new comprehensive zoning ordinance with clear standards and community protections for data center location, environmental protections, utility impacts, public transparency, and long-term accountability. Taking this 12-month period of time to adopt stringent and rigorous regulations now will provide critical protections for our community in the future. 1, we must create within the zoning code, at a minimum, clear regulations for locating AI data centers, electrical substations, transmission corridors, water availability, wastewater capacity, noise and light restrictions, road impacts, and tax agreements. 2, we must realize that the current surge in AI data center construction is highly unlikely to continue in its current form. New technology will quickly require newer facilities to replace older ones. I personally wonder if the monstrous AI data center in Port Washington will in fact be outdated before it's completed. Sheboygan cannot be left with stranded, massive buildings that have limited alternative uses. Before committing substantial public resources, our new zoning code must ensure that any development includes strong safeguards to protect taxpayers if market conditions change. Recent decisions by the Public Service Commission are a step in that direction, but we must ensure that such protections are in full force here in Sheboygan and can be enforced. 3, the zoning code must also provide that AI data centers cannot be planned, negotiated, or built in secret. Whether freestanding or with a zoning code, there can be no non-disclosure agreements signed by staff or elected officials. That is much to accomplish within 12 months. 18 months would be better, but this moratorium must pass tonight. There has been enough delay. And thanks to Alder Gravine, who with co-sponsors Alders Borst, Perella, and Close have brought this matter forward. The bottom line, well, this is what your constituents are asking you to do. I bring with me tonight over 1,400 handwritten signatures in support of a petition, I'm just going to get this together here, opposing construction and maintenance of any AI data center in Sheboygan. And these are some of the, well, these are all of the pages and all of the signatures. Also, in addition, an identical change.org petition online opposing any AI data center has more than 700 signatures. These are not just names on a page. They represent people who have taken the time to voice serious concerns about rising energy and utility costs, impacts on public health, excessive water and electricity consumption, unfair tax advantages, and a demand for a transparent decision-making process. Your constituents are asking that you put the public interest first and ensure that no project moves forward without full public scrutiny and full protections for our beloved community.
City Clerk?
Lisa Salgado.
All right. Lisa, name, address, item you're speaking on, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Lisa Salgado, Ellis Neighborhood. I support a moratorium for the city of Sheboygan. As the city considers data center zoning, I urge you to hire an independent professional with experience in data center land use planning to draft the ordinance. This is a highly specialized area involving water resources, energy demand, environmental impacts, health, public health, noise, property values, and quality of life. Sheboygan deserves zoning that protects our residents and our natural resources using recognized best practices. This document is very important. Second, I want to address that Wisconsin law requires the Joint Review Board to do more than simply receive the annual report. The board must annually review both the annual report and the performance and status of every TID. I confirmed this with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. I reported this to the city of Sheboygan because at the June 1st Joint Review Board meeting, there was no meaningful discussion of whether TIDs are meeting projections, even though the mayor actually read this exact Wisconsin statute at the beginning of the meeting, but did not realize that he was not following it. It also appears that there is some required information that is missing on the annual report. Today, 6 out of the city's 10 TIDs are underperforming their projections, and we do not have current cash flow charts for some TIDs, making these discussions even more important. Therefore, I support the Ellers contract to review the annual TID report with the Joint Review Board and the public, as they should have been doing annually and required by state statute. Thank you.
Right, City Clerk?
Mike Burnett.
Mike, name, address, item you're speaking on, you'll have 5 minutes.
Mike Burnett, 611 North Water Street, and I think it's 28. It's the data center thing, the moratorium. And me and Big Data ran through a whole bunch of different AI, asked it what's going on with all this, fit in as much conversation as I could, and it said, you already have really good laws on the books. And at a meeting where this kind of got somewhat approved, even though it's unanimous, it was questioned. They also approved an antenna for a garage, and they were able to handle that really easily. And it's the same thing. If a data center came in, you would have to handle the specifics. But what you're losing here is all leverage, all velocity on deals going forward. You're literally taking options off the playing field that you don't have to take off, and there's no reason for it. And it's like, and this is an obvious anti-data center, move. Why does it take a year? But what agreement on the big AI, me and who doesn't matter, is that you should stick with the laws that you have and basically just utilize when you have a review that you can take care of these issues. And other than that, you have to realize if you're going to put this moratorium in, you're not getting a data center within a year, right? But you're saying you can still rewrite stuff on the side. You don't have to put a moratorium in for a year, because if something comes in play that happens to work, because we're not going to get one of them big data centers, but what's coming next are going to be edge centers, and you're going to want them because edge centers are basically where all the data is coming to you, your Netflix, your Facebook accounts, so that everything goes snap, snap, boom, boom. And those are a lot smaller and more distributed, but you're going to snare up that, and it'll make Sheboygan kind of a blighted zone. And it's like, in my other little note, and it demanded I say it, and I go, I don't like mentioning people or whatever, but it said it's pretty obvious that both these petitions are basically the same branch of the Democratic Party structure. Bang, boom, good night.
Thank you, Mike. City Clerk?
Jamie McDonald.
All right, Jamie, name, item, and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jamie McDonald, Niagara Ave, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you again for the confidence in confirming me tonight to the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Jamie McDonald, also known as Jamie Bradford. I have been a part-time resident and homeowner in Sheboygan since 2016. Over the years, my family and I have been working toward making Sheboygan our full-time home. As many of you know, relocating a business and managing a blended family across 2 communities is no small undertaking, and it takes time. I am divorced and remarried, and my husband and I share placement of our children. For years, that required me to divide my time between Dane County, where my children attend school, and the home my husband and I have owned here since 2016. As our children have grown older, transitioning our permanent residence to Sheboygan has always been the plan, and we are now in the process of doing that. This time is consistent with the public record and with the written statement I submitted in 2024 when I applied to fill the vacant District 3 Common Council seat. I mention it only because it has been publicly and repeatedly claimed otherwise, including to my face last night on a public sidewalk where I was told that I don't even live here. I did not come here to trade attacks. Over the past several months, I have publicly corrected inaccurate claims about zoning, development, the city finances, and defended our public officials against what I believe were unfair attacks. The response has not been a discussion of the facts. Instead, it has been a steady campaign of personal attacks against me as a private citizen and neighbor. Along the way, I have been accused of being a Von Briesen attorney, a real estate broker from Milwaukee, City Administrator Casey Bradley, and you can surely see we are not the same person, a mouthpiece for the city, and most recently, somebody the city is paying to target a fellow resident. None of those claims are true. I am simply a homeowner and a neighbor who reads the documents, does her homework, and believes facts matter. And the fact that the story keeps changing speaks for itself. That campaign has also included the posting of my personal information online without my consent, including a confidential voter information which is protected under the Wisconsin law. I raise this only so it becomes part of public record because my name reflects, because none of that reflects healthy civic engagement. Healthy civic engagement is grounded in facts and respectful debate, not in efforts to intimidate or discredit private individuals. Reasonable people can disagree about TIDs, development, and the future of this city. That disagreement is healthy and welcome. What should not have any place in public discourse is publishing a neighbor's personal information or telling her she does not belong in her own community. The Board of Zoning and Appeals is an unpaid volunteer position. I did not seek for it or in recognition. I accept the opportunity because I care deeply about the city and because my professional experience from the applicant side, the review side, and the governance side of development allows me to contribute to a fair, thoughtful, and well-informed decisions. So let me close with a commitment rather than a complaint. Every case that becomes before the board will receive an open mind, consistent and fair hearing from me regardless of who brings it or whether they have supported me or opposed me. That includes those who have spent the past several months criticizing me. They will receive the same fairness and impartiality as anyone else does, because that's what this position requires. And it is for the standard I intend to uphold. Thank you again for your confidence, and thank you for the opportunity to serve the city of Sheboygan.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public forum? Yes, it does. All right. Without objection, we're going to do the first presentation. We're going to do the TID update by Ehlers, and we have Greg here from Ehlers.
Good evening. I'm going to give an overview of the status of all the city's active TIF districts, just kind of go through each one to just provide some summary information in terms of the history of the TID districts and some information on their financial performance. Before I go through each TID, I just wanted to mention kind of where we are in the TID calendar cycle. Every year in August, the Department of Revenue releases new incremental values for all TID districts and certifies those values on August 15th. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the new incremental values for each TID as of January 1st of 2026. These values will determine how much tax increment is collected in 2027. So there's literally new information that's going to be coming out within the next month. I just wanted to note that, and just, that's not reflected in this presentation as of yet, but that's annually when that information becomes available. So we'll start with just some background information on each of the TIF districts. So we have a chart that just kind of provides some basic facts for each district. So we list the TID district number and the general location of the district, its creation date, and then the type of district that was created. So mixed-use districts, for example, have a 20-year maximum life. Same with industrial districts. Rehabilitation districts have a maximum life of 27 years. All TID districts have an expenditure period that end 5 years before the end of the maximum life. That's really the statutory cutoff for any new project costs to be incurred. Districts can continue to pay existing obligations or contractual commitments that were entered into prior to the end of the expenditure period through the maximum life of the TID, but that's kind of a built-in statutory cutoff for any new projects. And then the last set of information in the chart is the incremental value for each district, and that's as of January 1st of 2025. So this is the number that's going to be updated and certified on August 15th for every TID district in the state. That'll be the incremental values as of January 1st of 2026. So the remainder of the TID districts, so TID 20, 21, 22, and 23, the active TIDs go all the way out until TID district number 2025. TID district 2026 was just created earlier this year. Several of the TID districts, as you'll see in the chart, were created in 2024. So just some comments on newer TID districts. So when a TID district is created, there is always a 2-year lag from the year of creation to when the district first collects tax increment. So the TID districts, for example, created in 2024 had a base value as of January 1st of 2024. How all TID districts work in the state is the 2024 was the first construction year for any TID that was created in 2024. Any construction activity that occurred in calendar year 24 gets valued as of January 1st of 2025. That value determined how much tax increment was collected by that district in 2026. So for any of the TID districts that were created in 2024, the first year the district was statutory eligible to collect increment was just this year, 2026. TIDs 25 and 26 have not been statutory eligible to create or to collect tax increment as of yet. So we're going to walk through kind of some information on each of these TIF districts. So we'll start with TID district number 16, which is 8th Street. There's a map that's just included by reference for each of the districts. This district has debt service outstanding that's payable through year 2033. The Encore Apartments and the Sheboygan Press have some incentives that they are eligible for, per terms of the development agreement, but the criteria to qualify for those development incentives has not been met as of yet, so those incentives have not been paid out. I'm going to go through the projected closure of the district, but that's presently in year 2030. So included is a detailed cash flow projection for TID district number 16. So we start with kind of the fund balance at the end of 2024, which is in the far right-hand column under the cumulative column in terms of the fund balance. This district in this cash flow model, we're not projecting any increases in value, just tax increment collected would remain stable. So you'll see by year 2030, the projected cumulative balance in the district is greater than the liabilities outstanding, which is remaining debt service. So if no other development occurred within the district, there was no loss of value, existing obligations remained in place, the district would have a fund balance in 2030 to pay off its obligations early and close early. So the district is projected, based on current incremental values, to be in position to close several years early. Next is TID district number 17, primarily along the Indiana Avenue corridor. This district also has debt service outstanding until 2039. There are development incentives that were offered and memorialized in development agreements for several developments within this district. So we list Badger State Lofts, General Capital, and the various funding sources and amounts identified for those development incentives. This district is projected to close in 2035, and these projections, get updated routinely as new information becomes available for all districts. So for TID District 17, we've just provided a little more detail for the revenue projection for this district. Again, the tax increments just projected to remain stable. We're not projecting any valuation increases or decreases. There's investment income that's historically allocated to this TIF district, intergovernmental revenues, which are forms of shared revenue from the state. That primarily makes up the current revenue stream for this district. In the past, this district received donations or allocations from prior TID districts. And then in terms of just the detailed cash flow projection, so debt service payments, again, are outstanding through 2038. And then we have estimated incentive payments for those existing development agreements. So most of the incentive payments are on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning that through the development agreements, a specified dollar amount is pledged to be repaid to the developer from tax revenue collected specifically from their developments. If they do not generate enough revenue to repay those incentive payments, the city is under no contractual obligation to make up that difference. So the pay-as-you-go development incentive method is a good way for the city to kind of put the focus on the developer to generate sufficient tax revenue to repay their incentive. So per the terms of the development agreement for several of these incentives in TID 17, the incentive payment year is capped at a particular year. So we're projecting how much incentive will be paid off based off of current values and the current tax rate for the TID district. And then we show some future capital outlay for some trail improvements. So again, without any projected increases in incremental value, existing obligations already committed, and potential future capital outlay, this district presently is projected to have a fund balance in 2035 to pay off its existing obligations, which, if no other project costs are incurred, would close several years ahead of its maximum life. TID district number 18, the South Point area. This district has debt service outstanding until 2040. There's a South Point incentive that was capped at $1,580,000, which was a combination of funds provided on the front end of the project as well as a pay-as-you-go component. This district is projected to close in 2039. So for this particular TID district, we did project some projected incremental value from construction ongoing within the district. So additional $60 million of value constructed between 2026 and 2027, which is conservative based off of the anticipated value, but we wanted to put together a conservative projection to look at the performance of this district. So the cash flow projection for this TID district, tax increment revenue coming in. Again, the only increase in value is for a project underway. We're projecting value that's less than the anticipated actual value for the district. Intergovernmental revenues from the state for this TID district. Debt service payments outstanding until 2039. Projected pay-as-you-go development incentives for the South Point development, and then just some allowances for ongoing costs within the district. So at the present time, this district is projected to remain open for its full maximum life, but by 2039 would have a fund balance sufficient to pay off remaining obligations of the district, only accounting for some anticipated value for projects under construction this year and anticipated next year. TID number 19, this is the River Bend TID district. Debt service for this district is outstanding until 2029. The office services group pay-as-you-go MRO development incentive is not to exceed $75,000. The watershed hotel incentive not to exceed $150,000, and the Rabber properties incentive not to exceed $350,000. This district is projected to close in 2033. So here's the cash flow model for this district. Again, not projecting any new increases in incremental value, just taking what's been certified and constructed as of January 1st of 2025, projecting potential shortfall payments that could be triggered from the Rabber Properties development, but that will be revisited as that project continues and new valuations come out. We have development incentives for existing agreements. So this district, if no other costs were incurred beyond what's already been committed, incremental value remain the same. The district would be projected to close in 2033, which is several years ahead of its maximum increment collection year as well. TID district number 20, this is the Oscar Apartments TID district. This district has debt service outstanding until 2030, a development incentive of not to exceed $75,000. Staff anticipates there could be additional trail improvements occurring within this district, estimated at $1.5 million. This district is projected to close in 2034. So the cash flow projection for this district, we have the tax increment coming in. Again, no changes in the current tax increment. The value holds, no new development anticipated. We have the debt service expenditures, the estimated incentive payments for Oscar Apartments. So without any other changes in tax increment or incremental value and existing obligations accounted for, this district would have a sufficient fund balance by 2034 to pay off existing obligations, again, well ahead of schedule. For the next several set of active TIF districts, these TIF districts are newer. As I mentioned, several of them were just created in 2024, have just had 1 year of tax increment collection, 1 year of incremental value certified. So we'll have more history on these as we go forward. There'll be the next round of incremental value certified in August. So we worked with staff, similar to when TID districts are created, to kind of take into account future increment based off of anticipated development within the district, taking into account existing obligations and some development incentives, either that have been committed, some that will be further committed as phases of development occur. So again, these districts have pay-as-you-go development incentives in place as well, which again, the developer is only eligible to receive if they generate sufficient tax increment to pay for it. So we've kind of projected out future values based on the current tax rate of the TID. But again, these TIDs are relatively new. So as we get farther in, you get a better chance to kind of see their performance, but there has been projections based off of costs committed already or anticipated development incentives that will be obligated if the developer generates sufficient increment and meets the criteria established in development agreements. TWID 22 is the west side development. So show the ending fund balance at the end of 2025. Similar projections for future tax increment based off of anticipated development within the district, existing debt service costs, and then development incentive payments as well. There's at the moment, no planned capital or future capital costs accounted for in this district. So really just looking at existing obligations and potential future development incentives. TID District 23 kind of shows the south side for this particular district, the fund balance at the end of 2025, future tax increment, again, taking the existing tax rate of the district, estimated values and build out over time of the district, future capital costs, and then future incentive payments, subject only to the developers meeting the criteria within those incentives to get those payments met. So kind of projecting that performance out as well. But again, we'll have more visibility on these as these TIDs start getting more history, both in terms of development and in terms of actual revenue and expense incurred. TID 24 kind of concentrated on one particular development in particular. So there's no debt service outstanding for this district, just a development incentive on a pay-as-you-go basis. So again, that full amount will only be paid out if the developer meets the obligations within those districts in that development agreement. And then finally, TID number 25 is the former Aurora site. Some debt service outstanding for this district. The MRO payments are development incentives on a pay-as-you-go basis, again, subject to provisions of the development agreements being satisfied. So you've heard me mention, the development agreements. As the city has a lot of provisions within those agreements. They're unique for each development, but the city has, protections built into many agreements. If there is debt service that was issued to fund an improvement that benefits a particular development directly, the development agreements have some security provisions in place that require increment to be collected to cover that debt service payment. There's valuation guarantees in agreements. There's shortfall payments in agreements that the developer is obligated to make, and other agreements have other security provisions as well. So you see several of the districts that have been around for a while are projected without any significant new value to recover their obligations. Newer districts continue to be evaluated as annual financial information is available and increment valuations are available. But again, really the terms of the development agreement really will specify those incentives and if they are paid in full. So that's kind of an overview of each of the TIF districts as they stand based on information that's available presently.
Thank you, Craig. Questions from alders? Susie? Alder Bors, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of clarifying questions in terms of recapping what you had just shared with us. If I understood correctly, TID 16 through TID 20, 4 of the 5 are projected to close several years early, and 1 is projected to close on time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And TIDs 21 through 25, I know it's just projections because there would be no financial performance for those because of how new they are. But just rough math, it looks like there's about a $1.1 million projection over what is necessary to close those out. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I mean, I think it's really a summary comment for those districts is that a lot of the development incentives are going to be dependent on the developer meeting benchmarks within those agreements. So I think really what we wanted to demonstrate was if those developments hit the benchmarks within the agreements and using the current TID tax rate, are those districts likely to recover their costs? So I think that's the methodology that we've used, and I think the preliminary information is encouraging, but we'll look at these on annual basis to make sure that the districts are meeting their obligations. But as I mentioned, there's security provisions put in a lot of these agreements. So if there's underperformance, particularly on development incentives, there are valuation guarantees and tax increment revenue benchmarks that have to be met. Those can be triggered as well. So all that will bear out over time as development moves forward.
Thank you.
Follow-up? Yep.
Much has been stated about the city's debt obligation related to TIDs. And as you had stated, most of the more recent TIDs that have been opened in the last few years have a pay-as-you-go structure. There are specific there are specific requirements within the development agreement that if they are not met, then those payments are not paid out. So from a debt obligation perspective, do you have some idea of the total debt obligation the city has versus what would not even be considered debt with the pay-as-you-go?
I do. I don't have all of that like immediately at my fingertips, but we can provide that to you in terms of how much of the city's debt outstanding is related to TID. But if you look at each of these charts with particularly the newer TIDs and the MRO payments outstanding, that shows really the full maximum amount of incentives that we project would be paid out. But again, that's going to be subject to the terms of the agreement being met. We're assuming the developer is going to generate sufficient increment to cover those obligations. If that doesn't happen, the revenue would be less, but so would the payments out. And then for some agreements, there's provisions that the developer's required to generate sufficient tax increment to cover city debt service, so that could trigger it as well. So, all these things can kind of be more precisely evaluated as we get farther into these TIDs. For all these newer TIDs, we literally have 1 year worth of data. So, it's so hard to kind of project that out. So we're kind of looking at things at a high level, but as time goes on, every development agreement gets looked at specifically.
One more?
Would it be appropriate for our finance director to provide any information on debt liability? I think the number, publicly, I think some people have shared in the community that we have upwards of $340 million of outstanding obligation to the city. So I'd just like some sort of guidance on how close the number actually is to that. If the finance director might be able to provide some insights.
Finance director?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. I did quickly do some rough estimates based on the current information that I had, and it shows that $43 million is outstanding through TID general obligation debt, which is the true bond payments that need to be made through these TIDs over the next, life of the TIDs. I do want to mention, Alder Bors had asked, how recently is the debt increased significantly as of recent, or has it been kind of a known thing that the city has done? And of that 43 million, about 43% of that debt was actually issued prior, 2020 or prior, and that's just the current outstanding amount. So that number was higher for those TIDs, but we've been making payments over several years. Regarding the municipal revenue obligations question, I don't have the number offhand to give you like a percentage. I was able to gather that number for the general obligation debt pretty quickly, but I can get additional information to you if you would request it.
No, I appreciate that clarification. I think it's obviously significantly lower than what some people may believe it to be by about $300 million. So thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Administrator, further commentary on this?
Just one other thing to add. All of that debt under our existing development agreements is covered. So this theory that the city taxpayers are on the hook for all of that, there's clawbacks in every single one of the development agreements to where it's either they have to pay the shortfall. If the development's already done, they would have to pay the shortfall, or there's personal guarantees where their personal assets are pledged against that. So those protections are in place, that meaning that of that, 43 million-ish that she said, if there were some type of default with the project, then those folks would be on the hook before the property taxpayers would. And that's why we have the development agreements we do to protect the property taxpayers. So yes, it's general obligation debt, but at the same time, there's multiple layers of protection for the city taxpayers to make sure that they don't get on the hook unless absolutely everything else were to fail.
Thank you, City Administrator. Alder Perla.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you be kindly addressing directly the statement that some of these TIDs do not meet projections? I know you have answered that, but would you, in a different way, but can you please address that directly? Is that true? And in which extent that is true? That some of these TIDs do not meet projections?
So I think as the detailed cash flows we went through for TID 16, 7 through 20 demonstrate that all these TIDs are either projected to generate sufficient increment to close early, or one was projected to remain open for its maximum life. And again, that was with conservative projections, with the exception of the one TID that was noted that has some new value generated that's under construction. All these other cash flow projections assume literally no other development would occur within the TID. So as long as that existing value remains stable, the tax rate was projected at current levels, all these districts are projected to cover their obligations. So districts may have a deficit, a fund balance deficit in a particular year, which means up until that point, it has not generated sufficient revenue to cover its expenses, but that doesn't mean it will stay in that deficit position for its full maximum life. It may recover those costs, and the detailed cash flows for many of the older active TID districts are all projected to satisfy their obligations.
So the ones perhaps that have been referred to are the newest ones. Is that correct? Is that your interpretation, that those are the ones that do not meet projections and don't meet projection because it's too early? Or please, can you expand?
I think it's a bit premature to say if a TID district that was created within the last 2 years is going to meet its obligations or not. Typically when we're presenting cash flow information, to whether it's joint review boards, we'll really take into consideration how much information is available. I think a lot of these districts have development agreements in place that, as the administrator mentioned, commit the developer to generate certain incremental value by certain date, generate certain tax increment collections, have protections in place for the debt service. So whether or not they're going to meet those obligations remains to be seen. That shouldn't be meant as a statement that it's going to work out or it isn't going to work out. These districts are new, the development's in progress. I think making predictions on something that's a year or two for something that could be in place for 20 to 27 years is a bit premature.
Thank you for that.
One more follow-up?
Please.
Yep.
you do this work for many other municipalities, right?
Correct.
Very good. Also comparable in size.
Correct.
Very good. Do you think that Sheboygan is particularly aggressive with the use of TIDs?
I think you've utilized the tool, particularly over the last couple of years, for targeted areas where you're trying to encourage development. There's really no meaningful alternative for the city to help encourage development or redevelopment outside the use of TIF districts. The tool, gets criticized, and not all TIF districts are successful across the state. However, there's no meaningful alternative for a city to use that can kind of capture the financial benefit that a TIF district can. I think important fundamentals to remember about TIF districts is they're a partnership between the city and the other taxing jurisdictions. All the other taxing jurisdictions, the county, the school district, the technical college, are all legally agreeing to create these TIF districts. They're a partnership because those other taxing entities are agreeing to forego their share of tax revenue on new development to help generate tax revenue that is getting reinvested within the boundaries of those districts and paying for costs incurred to bring that development to fruition. So for example, if you have an area that needs significant public infrastructure to see it invested, if a community chooses not to use a TIF district to help pay for that investment, that infrastructure investment, but does it on its own, the city is solely taking on the responsibility of paying that debt service and putting it on the general levy for the taxpayers. Alternatively, in that same scenario, if you have an area that needs infrastructure investment through the creation of a TIF district, the other taxing jurisdictions are agreeing to help pledge their tax revenue and help cover that cost. The development is generating increment, and you're using the tax revenue from that area to pay for the infrastructure that serves that area. There's a direct correlation between the revenue collected and the expense incurred. And as was mentioned, the development agreements have security provisions that require the developers to cover those debt service obligations. So alternatively, the city could fund it on its own, incur that expense. The TIF district provides a financing mechanism where you're sharing that responsibility with other taxing jurisdictions and putting the burden on developers.
I apologize to repeat the question. Do you think that we are more aggressive than other comparable cities in the use of the TIDs?
I think it's all dependent on what particular communities are trying to accomplish. I don't think there's a hard, fast number that what's the appropriate number for TIF districts in a community. Most communities, when they're creating TIF districts, are responding to particular development opportunities within those districts. If you see a wave of development opportunity come within a community at a given period of time, you're going to see an uptick potentially in the number of TIF districts that are created. Economic development is cyclical. So if you see a period where there's strong economic development, you may see an uptick in TIF creation. So I think you can compare the number of TIF districts that each community has, but I think the number isn't necessarily the definitive way to define if they are using the tool appropriately or not.
Thank you so much, sir.
Alder Kelly?
Hi, yes. We have several.
Alder Kelly, can you just bring the mic a little closer?
So there are several TID districts that overlap. I was hoping you could just review for us how, when a district is created that overlaps an existing district, how that impacts the existing district?
So you're talking about an overlay district?
I'm talking about how several of our districts here are part of newer districts that were created. I was just hoping to review how those older districts would be impacted.
So a property can only be located in one TIF district at a particular point in time. So just want to make that point clear. So if you have a property that was previously in a TID district, you can do what's called an overlay district, where if that particular property didn't develop within the maximum life of the prior district, you can create an overlay district and essentially start the clock over and put that property in a new TID. So any property that's in a current TID district is only located in one TID district at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Alder Kelly?
Nope.
All right. Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. My question kind of goes to is, do you see any red flags in any of these TIDs where you would say, boy, city better be a little bit careful, or do you see that these TIDs are healthy? I mean, from what I've seen, this that it appears to be that is the case, but I would like a confirmation, I guess.
Yeah, I think several of your districts that have been in place are, as I said, are projected to recover their obligations. Your newer TIDs, you have a lot of security provisions put in place in your development agreements to protect the city if developers don't meet their required objectives as specified in the development agreement. It's too soon to determine if all of those commitments are going to be made or not, but there are security provisions in place if they're not.
Thank you.
Alder Boers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You spoke to this, and I wanted to just follow up and ask a couple of clarifying questions regarding the partnership that we have with the Joint Review Board, if you will. Again, there, I think, have been lots of statements made about the fact that TIDs prevent funds from going into school district, county, tech college. If these TIDs weren't created and the incremental value associated with them was not available at the end of the TID, and just to be clear, they're not losing out on any ongoing revenue for the original tax base, correct? They're still receiving that year over year for the entire life of the TID. At the end of the TID, that incremental value, which each of those entities will benefit from, it would not have existed but for that TID being created. Is that correct?
That's the fundamental premise of a TIF district, is that without the use of TIF, that incremental value might not occur within the same time frame, might not result in a certain level of development. There could be job creation tied to particular projects within TID districts. There's lots of ways to evaluate those financial metrics, but your fundamental statements are correct. While a TID district is open, whatever value was there prior to the TID district being created, the city and all the other taxing jurisdictions continue to collect their share of taxes on that value. That's called the base value. And then the incremental value, yes, those taxing jurisdictions, by voting to approve the TID, are agreeing to forego their share of tax revenue to help pay for expenses that revenues generate in new development, under the premise when that TID district closes, there's going to be higher value, that when that district closes, all of that value returns to the tax rolls, benefiting all the taxing jurisdictions.
And just one follow-up on that same topic, if you will. In terms of the benefit that exists for the school district, for example, during the life of the TID, the ongoing development that happens for housing in particular, where we have additional housing stock, where we potentially would have more students, then there's an ongoing benefit to the schools from that, correct?
Schools get state aid on a per pupil basis. So yes, as development activity occurs within a TID that brings additional pupils into the district, that benefits the school district.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I get the last question then. Craig, can you kind of talk about TID, when you extend the life of a TID and how we collect the extra increment and how that's used for our affordable housing fund, just kind of a high level scope of that?
Yes, so under state statute, if a TID district has reached the end of its maximum life or has recovered enough costs to pay off its obligations, you have the option to keep the district open for one additional year to collect an additional year's worth of tax increment. And then under state law, you can, that's called the affordable housing extension. So 75% of that increment must be used for affordable housing. And that tax increment that's collected can be spent anywhere within the city. There's no correlation between the district boundary. The TID's just the financing mechanism to provide those funds. So you set them aside in a separate fund and they can be spent, there's no time period to spend those down. So of that extra year's worth of increment, 75% has to be spent on affordable housing projects or projects that benefit affordable housing. The TIF statutes define affordable housing as housing that does not cost more than 30% of a household's gross monthly income. That's the TIF definition of affordable housing. And then the other 25% you can spend on housing stock improvements with no income threshold. So the program's entirely optional. It's at your discretion. You can use it for some TIDs, not use it for others. But once you terminate a TIF district, you can't then go back and say, I want to do the affordable housing extension. The policy decision to make that occurs before you pass the termination resolution.
Great. Thank you. That will conclude that presentation for this evening. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
We'll get transition to our next presentation, the City Administrator's 2026-2027 Work Plan.
All right, good evening. I'll try to go quick once it gets fully loaded here. There we go. So when I started a couple of years ago, one of the requirements was to come up with a work plan because we didn't have a formal strategic plan in place. So I think we took the first 4 to 5 months to work with department heads on coming up with a more of a strategic work plan. The purpose of that was to come up with a high-level plan for a 2-year period. And then we're done with that first 2-year period. Now we're looking at a second 2-year period for 26 into 27 with the goal of having a formal strategic plan put in place for the 2028 fiscal period, going with a 5-year strategic plan moving forward and working our way into actually developing a plan. So I won't go through everything in the slideshow just for timing, but for the 24-25 work plan overview, we had about 23 items that were on there that were citywide. Completed about 9 of them, about 14 of them are still open for the total of 23. A lot of them are presented, like the communication strategy, facilities capital improvement plan. We're going to be talking about that at our next council meeting. That is complete, but it still has to be worked in. It's probably going to take a couple of years to get that worked into the budgeting process, the comp plan, the zoning code update. All of those are items that are near completion and ultimately waiting for final approval of council. So nearly complete, but taking longer than anticipated. The 2026 work plan, we had department heads turning in their priorities. So we kind of pivoted with this work plan. Instead of being high-level priorities aggregated across the city, more specific to each department. Like I said, working into that long-term strategic plan and building that framework for building that process. So April 21st to June 1st, we've had departments developing their work plans. June 1st, we had a presentation of all departments with council leadership just to get that feedback and that input. On June 22nd, we had a draft plan with the memo and shared it with all of council. And then tonight is obviously the presentation of the full plan. Citywide strategic themes, technology modernization, digital transformation, workforce development and succession planning, interagency collaboration, infrastructure and investment asset management, community engagement, transparency, and then cross-departmental procedure and process integration. Challenges that could prevent progress towards completion of the plan. Obviously, staffing limitation, capacity constraints, budget pressures, levy limits. We're completely limited to net new growth as our only opportunity for additional revenue. So as we just spent the last hour talking about where our TIFs are, if we're not able to progress there, then we go backwards every single year because revenue doesn't keep up with the cost of inflation. Supply chain, vendor delays, regulatory changes. Obviously, every year we kind of see changes out of the state that affect our ability to operate, technology limitations, external events, and then any strategic drift that we see. For departments, for the city administration, communications is going to be a big priority. Obviously, we have the new communications position just started, executing a media plan, overall communications, both internally and externally. We're in the process. We should be bringing forward the chatbot for the website and a number of other different initiatives to modernize our ability to communicate with the community and then also internally. Organizational culture, obviously the Arbinger training, we're rolling that out and making that more of a values-based part of the strategic plan. So we're in the process of that. That is going to be a multi-year rollout. Fiscal management, implementation of the capital planning changes. So again, we'll be going over the findings of that at the next council meeting, but that is significant. It's for the first time identified every single facility owned by the city and then creating a long-range fiscal plan based on that. So it's going to take a couple of years to get that involved. We spent a bulk of the last couple of years updating standard operating procedures as they exist now in departments. And now, as we deploy new technology and start working that into our daily operations, be a priority to update our SOPs to reflect the new activities and how work gets done. Transitioning the assessment department in-house from a contracted service. Obviously, our goal is to have that up and running by January 1st, but there's still going to be a long transition, getting all the files integrated into the new system that the city's adopting, and then working with other communities and identified partnerships that can reduce costs and improve services to the city residents. City infrastructure, obviously implementation. Phone system transition is a top priority. Implementing citywide facilities assessment, public safety complex, Fire Station 2, Harbor Center, Marita, schematic design, and then if approved, we'll continue moving forward that process. D-Land Park Phase 2, starting that design process. Fountain Park design, pedestrian bridge, TID projects, Lakeshore Interceptor, and then obviously the ongoing need for maintaining our street improvement programs. So a lot of projects on the administration side. And then Meredith.
Thank you. Good evening. There are 3 identified focus areas for the clerk's office. Number 1 is for licensing. Our software system for processing licensing applications is still working, but it is outdated. So we will be transitioning to a new, more integrated software system. We also will be working with the city attorney's office to update and revise our licensing chapter of the code, which is chapter 4, and continuing to update the policies and procedures for processing all our licensing applications. For elections, we are going to continue to refine the process in regards to utilizing our electronic poll books, which are the Badger books, and expand more information and resources with the new city website. For agendas and minutes, MuniCode Meetings has given notice that they will cut the software as of next June of 2027. So we're going to roll out a new agendas and minutes software. They'll also provide us the opportunity to strengthen our standards for all agendas and minutes across all city committees and boards.
And our goal for that is to transition in January. So
yes.
That's about a 6 to 8 month rollout period. So building up to that, it's going to be a lot of work for Meredith and her staff and obviously IT. So City Attorney, Liz.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the 3 identified areas for the city attorney's office are staffing stability. The city attorney's office was staffed by 3 full-time attorneys. We were down to 1 for quite a while. We're back up to 2. Because of that staffing issue, we've had to increase reliance on outside legal counsel. So that ties into our 3rd item, which is bringing down the reliance on outside counsel to a more balanced ratio. And we anticipate bringing all routine legal matters back in-house. We are already underway with that. We also are working to develop policies and procedures specific to the department while we support all of the other departments in their policy and procedure development and review. Moving into human resources, similar to some others that have been spoken of already, but supporting department-specific staffing analysis, making sure that job descriptions are accurate to the work being performed, making sure that that job descriptions for similar positions are appropriately matched, increasing our utilization of technology and standardizing our training platforms for all city leaders and employees, And then developing partnerships with our other departments on developing policies and reviewing policies for updates, making sure that all policies that are citywide are supporting all of the city departments, and that each department has a stake at the table is really important for our HR team. Thank you.
All right, Hugo. You can stay there. Okay, great.
Should be line for you.
Oh, hey, good afternoon. From the Facilities Department, Facilities and Capital Improvements, work with corresponding departments throughout the city to create a capital improvement plan on the results of the facility condition assessment reports, ADA compliance improvements across city-owned facilities, and review and implement a computerized maintenance management system, CMMS system, work order system. Operations and maintenance, continued day-to-day repair and maintenance of all city-owned facilities, and strategic goals, evaluate staff structure for developmental strength to better serve all internal departments.
All right, finance.
Thank you. Several of these have been touched on by Administrator Bradley because we do work collaboratively on quite a few of these items. The first one is that capital asset plan that he did mention. We, as he mentioned, got the state of the facilities assessments back, and so we will be incorporating those into a larger capital asset plan that looks at the replacement schedule and maintenance requirements of all assets that the city owns to make sure that we're funding them appropriately and maintaining them as needed. The internal assessment division will fall within the finance department, so this will be a large undertaking for myself. Implementing the new software, we have already started that process and have posted the 3 positions that will be filled hopefully in the next few months so that we can onboard the new staff. And then we will also need to create internal procedures in order to support the function and policy required of that division. A big initiative of myself is going to be continuing to increase the public information side of things. Finance is not the most fun topic for everybody to learn about, but I find it very fascinating, so I like teaching people about it. So I'm looking forward to creating additional documents, making sure the public is well engaged in learning about what it means for the finance side of the city. Continue to work on finance best practices. We have an audit that occurs every year, looking at doing an investment and banking review to make sure we're utilizing the best options that we have available to us. It created an internal audit position that is still, I would say, in its infancy of process. We want to increase that to make sure that everyone is following all these policies that we are creating, especially in regards to the finance side. And then increasing additional reporting to the Finance Committee. We have plenty of opportunities to provide quarterly reports and things of that nature to the committees. So making sure we're doing that and making sure additional information is out there for the public. And a project that is upcoming is the consolidation of a fee schedule. Currently, all of our fees are buried in the municipal code, which can be very difficult for residents and developers or even contractors to find. So the finance department is working on pulling those out into a consolidated fee schedule and making sure that those are all reviewed annually. And then lastly, long-term financial planning. Though we do look at this during budget cycle, we want to make it a more solid process and have a database that we can update every year based on the changing factors that we see each year, and bringing that forward through the budget process as well.
All right, fire department.
Thank you. I do like learning about finance, so thanks. So real quick, we just got a bunch of stuff that we're continuing to look at that will help us prepare and become more efficient in our emergency responses. Some of those are emergency medical services, working with local hospitals and our medical control director to look at our protocols and how we respond. We also had recently added the ability to administer whole blood to certain patients, which would help increase the likelihood of their survival during a trauma. Some other things we're working on are workforce succession planning. It has not been as robust as it should have been in the past, so we are really concentrating on that, getting our officers or our supervisors certified at various levels and continuing to plan for the retirements. We will continue, as Administrator Bradley had mentioned, working on the facilities, making them ADA compliant, and working on the public safety complex, as well as our other fire stations, just bringing them up to speed, making sure they're going to last quite a while. And then working with fire prevention and risk reduction continues to enhance our ability to go out and educate the public, work and inspect our businesses, making sure that the community is safe. And then working alongside our partners within the community, especially within the city. We're working very closely when preparing for like the boat races or large events, and then working at how we can respond and react when a disaster might hit the city. So that is stuff that we are working with the police department, finance director, attorneys, administrator, et cetera, facilities, public works, you name it. So, yeah.
Thank you. IT, Matt.
Thank you. The IT department will continue to support our integration into the Microsoft 365 platform, expanding the environment and elevating our end users' experience. The goal being to improve collaboration, communication in a real time, and increase the number and access to different software tools. Next, we will be merging a number of scattered security systems from across the city, primarily the card access and camera systems, giving us centralized oversight of those systems and eliminating some overlap of vendor services that we're getting from a number of different vendors at this time. Our financial software provider is transitioning to a software as a service model. The IT department is going to need to support this shift by managing the transition process, ensuring that integration, and a real key thing is maintaining the continuity for end users and our citizens. Lastly, we will be completely replacing our outdated VoIP phone system that will include quite a bit more functionality and flexibility for our internal users. Thank you.
All right, Mayor.
Thank you, everybody. So obviously my office, there's a lot of cross collaboration amongst many different departments as well. So these are just a few of the pillars to highlight this evening. So obviously economic development is a big role in terms of community outreach and engagement on that, as well as housing advocacy initiatives, and working with collaborative key partners as well to drive local partnerships for economic growth. City infrastructure, obviously this entails a lot of the advocacy investment in our parks, working with certain departments to acquire grant funding. We've received grant funding for the pedestrian bridge, for dog parks, a variety of different topics like that. Obviously, we're still in the lighthouse ownership transfer phase, as well as a large goal, if you will, of rail service and connectivity as well. So a part of city infrastructure, community engagement as well, touches a lot of what my office does. So working with residents and constituents on casework and support. Just today alone, we worked with constituents regarding events, permitting, and liquor licensing, and street closures and sinkholes, right, Joel? So also expanding social media presence, a lot more videos and engagement online, informing the public, as well as just general outreach and external relationships in the community. And also another bullet point is tourism and intergovernmental affairs, working with many different levels of government, whether it's the county board, whether it's state representatives, federal representatives, or intergovernmental agencies as well, and then also some tourism initiatives and programming as well.
All right, Garrett.
None. Oh, okay. For Mead, a couple things that are going on this year. We're working with Bold Path Consulting for Human Resources. I believe they worked with the DPW as well as the Planning Department in the past, and so we've been working with them on studying our management team and kind of getting some feedback from them. I assume that study will be going to the council soon. Should be pretty close to done, I believe, at this point. They're also looking, as Liz said, at our job descriptions. So they're helping us kind of go over and audit all of our job descriptions, make sure they're up to date. As far as community and policy, we're looking at, internally, we're looking at all of our different policies, like behavior and things like that, external facing policies, and then working with our library board to update all of those. And then as far as facilities and capital improvements, we've been quite a few big projects going on. We've had our roof just got redone in the spring, so we're very thankful for that. We've been working internally on some build-outs with, we have a community resources office. So when we're doing like notary type work with people, that's not just done out in the open. On the second floor, we're later this month we'll be putting in probably 3 new study rooms is what we're doing. And then in the fall, we're looking at a sensory room in the youth services area. Looking ahead next year, we're hoping to do some revamping of our ROCA room, big meeting space. And then also we're in the process of studying our restrooms. As has been mentioned by Hugo and others, we have some ADA compliance. Our restrooms right now are grandfathered in, but we're looking at potentially updating those in the future. So we're trying to get some cost estimates for that. And then as far as technology goes, Matt mentioned the city has a lot of different systems. The library is guilty of a lot of those. We have built out a lot of systems prior to the city adopting certain things, and now we're trying to integrate those systems together. So, for instance, like Microsoft Office, we had our own system. We were using Google Docs for many years, and now we're trying to integrate it into the Microsoft suite as well. We have the cameras. That's an independent system, and the fob system, and so all these different systems are trying to put it together with the city to save money and just be more integrated with the city. And then we also have several projects that we're doing just on a service level at the library, such as adding more hearing loops to our meeting spaces. And also we're looking at replacing all of our self-checkout units, which are about 8 years old next year. So those are a couple of things that we're doing at the library.
Thank you. Planning.
Hello. We have some significant updates going on. So the first one being the comprehensive plan. The last time that was updated was 2011. So we are looking to become in compliance with state statute. Additionally, we are also looking to update the zoning code that was last updated in 1996. And as much as I love the 90s, the world has significantly changed since then. Once again, the TIF policy updates, just making sure we have our annual review of that. Chapter 12, which governs the building inspection team, making sure that that is current, and also CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Enhancement, to make sure that it meets our long-term needs. Additionally, we do have some housing and some community engagement programs. We would like to create a down payment assistance program. So tonight you heard Greg talk about the Housing Affordability Fund. The goal is to explore a down payment assistance program of some sort. Additionally, continuing to support the housing rehab program. The city does have a housing rehab program specifically through CDBG funds. This is something that we've seen some significant interest in. The CDBG staff person was the CDBG staff person had joined the team last winter. So since she has been there, we have seen some major success, and that is definitely due to her and all of those marketing efforts. Last one is some building inspection related updates. If let's say you have pulled a permit recently, you know that we do not have an online system, and you do have to fill out a paper form. So making sure that it is more accessible to all, and making sure that we have that online permitting system. The hope is to have that launch fall of this year.
All right, thank you. Police Department.
Well,
Thank you. Hopefully everyone's eyes haven't glazed over yet. We're going alphabetically, so I think there's only about 3 departments left. There's just not much alphabet left. You'll see on the slide that there are 4 main areas that we're working on internally at the police department: cultural development goals, staff development and structure goals, operational and preparedness goals, and administrative strategic goals. I'll just highlight a few things going on in those. So last year for cultural development goals, we did 2 things really that I think have kind of helped to communicate culture and build culture internally. One was to create a consistent process of goal setting. And that has this year translated into from department-wide goals to work group goals in support of those things. And so on the next slide, you'll see the benchmarks that we're using basically to measure our progress towards those goals. The other thing that we did was develop a list of 22 fundamental behaviors. So we already have values, vision, mission, values, like many organizations do, but we felt like there was a gap that those things were not communicating when it came to expected behaviors in support of our values. The fundamental behaviors have really, I think, been a good fit to help fill in that gap and really communicate and make daily discussions about behaviors that we need from everyone and to hold each other accountable for to be successful as an organization. That was the result of about 5 years worth of work in different processes, including work that we did with a previous consultant. The city hired change management. If you were on the council, you remember that Tina Schulke's group was brought in to do some internal assessments and culture work and surveys. And so that was really probably the first step in what has resulted in this, our fundamental behaviors. And I can tell you it's really been a nice thing. It's been adopted well and received well by really all levels of the department. Right now, the assistant chief is leading a Find It in the Field challenge where individual employees can nominate others who have demonstrated the highlighted fundamental of the week. And again, that's really been instrumental in bringing those kinds of conversations just into everyone's daily practice. We've also provided some leadership training for our supervisors to help coach and develop their employees using the fundamental behaviors. And so that's a way that we're continuing to implement those. Under staff development and structure goals, so training and development opportunities, we have one of our benchmarks is our internal training hours. And so that's a significant benchmark that we see as a way to continue supporting the work that we do by providing our officers the tools they need to be successful through training experiences. We also have a lot of people that are in new positions, and so there was a lot of cross-training and supervisory leadership training that needed to take place as well, and so that's underway. We also developed something that we call a training matrix. So after an officer graduates from the academy, there's a lot of training that they need throughout their careers to continue to have the skills and expertise that they need to perform their basic functions. And so we didn't really have a coordinated way of tracking who had received what training. The matrix has kind of pulled all of that together. And the next step with that is essentially to build those into personalized professional development plans for each employee at every level of the department, so that at evaluation time and throughout the year, their supervisors know where they're at, know what training they need, know what interests they might have, and can move forward with that individualized training plan. The other part of this is the department structure and special assignment opportunities. So there's 3 main things that we're looking at there. Those of you that have been around for a while may remember that up until about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a street crimes unit that was disbanded because of staffing shortages and turnover. However, our staffing has stabilized to the point where we are ready to reestablish our street crimes unit, so that should happen this quarter. The street crimes unit is really intended as a specialized unit kind of set aside to attack crime and quality of life problems that crop up in our neighborhoods and to work together to help bridge the gap not only between our 2 primary divisions, between patrol and investigations and our drug unit, but also work with other partners, other city departments to help solve those long-term problems. The other part of it is we have 1 canine unit right now, so one canine and 1 handler officer. We have traditionally had 2. I think it's an opportunity because that canine we expect to retire in the near future. I think it's an opportunity for us to reevaluate that program to make sure that we have the right management and supervision in place for it, and to continue to use it not only as a crime fighting tool, but the community outreach and engagement tool that it is as well. And then the last part of that is our professional services division, our information and records division. That has been kind of maybe not been evaluated for a long time as far as structure and efficiencies in that department, and so that's underway right now as well. Under operational preparedness goals, so this is really about positioning our officers to be able to respond to critical incidents that happen in our jurisdiction. Obviously, we all want to knock on wood and make sure that something like that never happens here, and we are superstitious, so please do knock on wood for us. But we want to make sure that not only officers have the equipment that they need, but also training. And so through some grants, we've been able to add some high-risk response gear to our squads to be able to deploy that in the field more frequently, including shields and rescue equipment, things like that, if we were to have a mass casualty incident or an active shooter incident at one of our schools or another facility. The other part of that is conducting training. And so one of the things that has never happened here is a large-scale mass casualty or active shooter incident. And so on August 12th, we will be working with the school district and many other departments will all be coming, including from within the city, but also other law enforcement agencies, to hold a large-scale active shooter and mass casualty training event at Horseman Middle School. That's August 12th. And so we'll obviously be notifying the public about that so nobody panics when they see lots and lots of police and other EMS service activity there. But that is being conducted really at a very minimal cost. There's an outside group that comes in and coordinates the training, so really all of our staff is able to participate in that event, and we can kind of test out our preparedness for an event like that. The other parts of it, so continuing to focus on our collaborative, proactive, partnership-based strategy to help solve crime in our neighborhoods. And so one of the things that happened this year is there's a new school resource officer at our downtown schools at the old Central High. That is not only to help continue to strengthen the relationship with our school district and to help reach some of the most, I would say, at-risk kids as well in our school district, to help connect with them, but also to help with some of the issues that we see with surrounding businesses in the downtown area to help police that area as well. And then we are interested in continuing our partnership with the county for the behavioral health co-responders. That is a concern of ours since obviously we in the county used ARPA money to pay for that, but it's certainly been successful at improving outcomes for community members experiencing behavioral health crisis or needing behavioral health treatment, and reducing the cost of emergency detentions and the frequency of essentially having to detain people because of reaching that crisis point where they're a risk to themselves or others. And so we look forward to finding ways to help continue that. We think it's been very successful. And then also developing the public safety campus. Chief Montellano talked about that as well. The part of that really is the joint training facilities is an important part of us ensuring, again, that our officers have the tools to be prepared to respond to incidents and provide the best service to the community. The last thing under administrative goals is we have not been an accredited agency for some time. That was something that we sought back in about 2004. That accreditation was allowed to lapse due to some reorganization in the department. However, we feel like we're in a position with our policies and procedures and our staff to be able to undertake that again. The Wisconsin Law Enforcement Accreditation Group has a pretty affordable and effective process for that. Our policy manual essentially we've just completed reviews and updates to the manual consistent with the standards from the accreditation group, and so we believe that we're in a position where by early next year we'll be looking at core accreditation and then moving to full accreditation in the following year. I believe the next slide just has an overview of benchmarks and outcome measures. Unless there's anything specific anybody wants me to address, I think I've probably talked enough already, so I'll quit there.
All right. Public Works.
Good Well, I will say that's a hard act to follow, but I do appreciate you acknowledging that you saved the best to last. So, well, for Public Works.
You're not the last.
In Public Works, having 11 main divisional services, we have a very broad reach in just about most things that go on in the community. So what you see before you really scratches the surface of many objectives, plans that we have implemented or looking to implement. Some of the high-level ones, what we've done is everything that is on here takes into account that we are reviewing every operation, every service that we provide, and looking for efficiencies, knowing that there's always that potential or the restrictive nature of budget and then staffing. So we focus everything we can to improve efficiencies with basically less. One of the main things in our engineering side is the GIS integration pretty much across all citywide, interdepartment and interdepartment. Right now we have approximately 20 functioning operational workflows with GIS, and that is really scratching the surface of what the capabilities are. So we're going to continue to look to expand upon that. With enhanced customer service, I'm looking our staff. We're intentionally trying to become more visible in the community, i.e. being present at events that occur throughout the community, so they know that not only do we support them on the planning side, but we support them on the backside. And that also goes in line with some community engagement. We've initiated the Name That Truck last year. We did it again this year. We altered and changed the large item disposal day event, which has been an incredible success. And in actuality, has been a blessing for a lot of the staff because the public gets to interact with our staff directly, something that a lot of times they just never get that opportunity to do. And our staff really appreciate it as well. Going down to operations and fleet maintenance, just continued street resurfacing programs, continuing the lighting upgrades throughout the city, sanitation optimization. What that is that we have a collection cart-based system that was initiated in 2018. We have a lot of aging components to that, and we're looking to adjust the routes to improve efficiencies. And also that recently the streets operations side took over the collection of all waste within the parks as well to try and assist the parks because it's such a stress on our parks group to keep up and maintain mowing and maintenance of those facilities. So again, stressing that doing more with less. Wastewater. With all the requirements, federal and state coming down for PFAS compliance, they're looking at ways to initiate those objectives and initiatives. We are constantly looking at ways to sustain our long-term for the wastewater treatment plant. Being built in 1978, came online in 1981. It's one of the oldest plants out there without having any significant upgrades, adjustments, or complete reconstruction. So looking at that and what we can do to make the necessary adjustments, but then maintain that for the future. Parks and forestry, everybody's favorite. Looking at expanding and maintaining our urban forest that we have right now through increased tree plantings. Develop a comprehensive forest management plan, delivering more projects through grant-funded programs. We're looking outside of the box on that. Upgrading parks with new amenities, infrastructure repairs, enhanced maintenance practices. We're looking at native landscaping and also exploring no-mow native prairie areas to reduce the demand and stresses on not only our park staff, but our parks equipment. And then obviously ADA improvements across all the parks and citywide facilities. just stressing that we have taken on, another thing too that we're stressing response and efforts to improve is through the See-Click Fix option that has been activated on the city website. A few quick stats through that. So far this year, 559 reports that are DPW related this year. 493 have been completed or closed. 170 potholes reported and 104 tall grass complaints reported. And that's just touching the surface. So I'll keep it short there.
All right. Thank you. Transit.
Emily, did you want to go? All right. I had to come up here, guys. I'm sorry, I can't read those TV screens. All right, planning and compliance. So being that we receive a substantial amount of federal aid from the Federal Transit Administration, much of our planning and compliance is set forth by FTA. So we're looking at this year completing a transportation development program for years 2026 through 2030. That outlines basically forecasted or different possible changes within our transit system to better accommodate maybe budgets, revenues, infrastructure developments, things like that. So that'll wrap up here in the next couple months. That also includes some public informational sessions that have been held already as well. Many other plans such as Transit Management, Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, our ADA program, Title VI and FTA training reviews are all things that are required. We will have our training review, which is an every 3-year review by FTA in 2027. I'm hoping to make that lucky number 4 in a row without any findings, so fingers crossed. Fleet and technology, we are looking to replace our 5 2010 or 1000 series buses. There's going to be a little bit of holdup on that because in 4 years' time, the buses went up $297,000. So we're going to re-strategize on what that means for us and how we can replace these vehicles. I'm also looking at a new CAD AVL system that would be just basically better dispatching, better GPS, better bus technologies for our customers and for my staff. Again, we are migrating our website. Many have spoken before about the website. We were an external website, really not featured within the city's website, and we'll be integrating and migrating our website within the city's platform. It's already there. We're just still holding our old website up just until we have all updated links and things updated. Also looking at updating team policies and procedures with staff training to support these changes. On the parking side, we don't have enough time tonight to talk about parking, so I'll keep it brief. But we are looking at a parking utilization study. We've actually started that already, where we are taking inventory of the utilization of our parking lots, both free and paid. That would be through South Pier, Riverfront, and downtown. We are also working with external legal on Riverfront Parking Assessment District and hoping to have some resolutions on clarity and moving forward with that. And then also looking at a comprehensive multi-department parking study and assessment to be completed by the end of 2027. The last ones that we did were in 2017, I believe. So we're right there where we should be reevaluating our parking needs and what that looks like going forward.
All right, thank you. And last but not least.
And for the record, this, I believe, is the last department.
Okay, now truly the best for last. So really quickly, we've got 3 main focuses this year, and most of them are already in progress, but I think none of you are surprised to know that we have had significant growth since we opened in our new location 3.5 years ago. So like what DPW went through and the library is wrapping up, we are planning to work to figure out what right-size staffing looks like for us. so we can know what that's supposed to be and then develop a plan on how we can get there to meet the demand that we're seeing. That's a big one. The other big project, working with my colleague to my left here, is on our Phase 3 construction. So that's already in progress, working with the architects to get updated estimates for the final build out that would complete the building, and then I'll be pounding the pavement to find the money to do that. Also reevaluating our furnishing needs now that we've been open for a while. Some things are unfortunately already ready to be replaced, but also just investing in some more things to meet the needs of more than 300 people that are coming every day. And then finally, continuing to evaluate how we're doing and how our participants feel that we're doing, and adjust our programming and offerings as they tell us.
All right, thank you. So just want to thank all of our department heads. The last couple of years, we've done a lot. I know we've got a lot going on, obviously, with the all the development stuff that we have going on, and we've got really good participations, very collaborative group. But we've really been focusing on the last couple of years, updating policies, procedures, and I know a lot of that stuff has come before council. We've literally touched just about everything. As we kind of dug into things, we found one department, I believe, was 2002 was their safety policies that they were following. So we've addressed those. We've addressed the fiscal policies, the personnel policies, the IT policies. Obviously, the data breach really kind of set us back. So, you know, we're now getting to the point where we're able to be a little more proactive in addressing the training side of things, the more strategic planning side of things. That's all possible because of the group of department heads that we have, you know, and our elected officials. Everybody's working together very well in making this actually possible. There's a ton of work that doesn't get seen here or by the public, but hundreds, if not thousands, of staff hours in addressing all of this on top of just doing our normal day-to-day jobs. So tremendously appreciate all their work and effort. And then kind of talking about the next step, getting into the strategic planning process. So kind of looking at and evaluating the basis of doing a strategic plan, you know, really focusing on understanding where we're at, and we're finally at a point where we really can. So we're starting the process now with the anticipation of having a plan that would be implemented as part of the 2028 budgeting process. So right now, we've formed a steering planning committee, which is essentially a representative of each department or multiple representatives, depending on how the department requested to have representation, as well as council leadership. The plan would be to do a departmental task inventory, which is essentially going through every single service provided by the city and listing, is this discretionary? Is it mandated by law? Is it mandated by ordinance? And going through and conducting an inventory. So there's a better basis of understanding on building a strategic plan based on what we have to do and what we have discretion over doing. So, and then building upon that, I think we have 7 different categories of worksheets that each department has to work through. So that's going to take us at least till the end of the year. And then our plan is to bring in a consultant to help get through that next phase, which would be essentially building out the mission, vision, values for the organization. Since we've adopted the Arbinger Institute as our basis, the outward mindset, the plan is to help transition us to a values-based organization and using that as the basis for the values in everything that we're doing, and obviously then becomes the expectation throughout the organization. So kind of having that in the background as opposed to just a cookie cutter strategic plan, and then getting into a community feedback to get the community's input on top of staff and elected officials. So that multi-phase process there. The stakeholder engagement we're looking at in 2027 from January to September, and then a draft of the proposed strategic plan coming before council in that 2027 for the 28 budget process. So that would be then a five-year strategic plan would be the goal of that.
Right. Questions from alders? Alder Bors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions really, but I just want to say that obviously we've been, seeing you guys all present for about 45 minutes, and it's impressive that we can cover as much as we did in that time frame. I want to just express appreciation to everybody here who presented this evening. I know there's a significant amount of work that goes into this, and as you had said, Casey, I think that you don't necessarily think through or see the efforts that, each of these departments has to put in place in order to be successful. And knowing that we have had to do very foundational things like building out SOPs that just simply did not exist within the last few years, and are able to move into succession planning, looking forward, doing a mass casualty, walkthrough, which is something we would, again, knock on wood, hope to not have to experience, but it allows us to be forward thinking. All the initiatives that are going on, all the work that all the departments are doing is greatly appreciated, and thank you for sharing that with us this evening.
Thank you, Alder Bors. All right. We will continue. Alder Prella?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to appreciate, just express the appreciation, especially for some of the initiatives that were reiterated tonight. I too appreciate the idea of increased preparedness from the police department, but I also like the fact that initiatives like the shared behavioral program will continue. That is really significant to me because I know that funds are not there anymore from the ARPA funds, so I appreciate that you too understand how important that is for the community. I have just a couple of questions, which are just curiosities. What is the number of membership that we have right now at the Uptown Social?
I looked earlier this evening, and it is 2,282.
That's truly impressive. And I was also curious.
I don't pay them to come. They come of their own free will.
Yes, I verify that on a regular basis. I truly appreciate it. One more thing is about the library. I assume we track numbers of the public, right? Have we seen an increase in public participation in the library, at the library?
There we go. We were way down after COVID, but we're coming back up. So it's not to the level that it was probably in the middle of the last decade, but it's gone up quite a bit the last couple of years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Just one point of clarification too. Council was very much assisting with, Uptown Social, us being able to use ARPA funds for the GEM, a lot of the programs that we're actually looking into the facility and putting the library and bringing them into the planning process. So the support from council is making a lot of this possible, and we very much appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, everybody. All right. We'll jump we'll skip mayor's announcements since we still have a long agenda ahead of us. We'll go to the consent agenda, items 11 through 25. Alder Bors.
I move to accept and file all reports and adopt all resolutions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Under discussion, Alder Decker.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to real quick touch on items 12, 18, and 21. We all know that the boat races were canceled by NHRA. I just want to recognize that city staff has done awesome effort so far, and they're continuing to do an effort to bring in alternative programming for us for that. And I just want to thank city staff for all their efforts for doing that.
Thank you, Alder Decker. Any other discussion on any of the items on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Alder Close. Aye. Thank you. 9 ayes.
Those items are approved. Next, item 26, resolution number 602627 by Alders Decker and Kelly, authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute an offer to purchase between the City of Sheboygan and Daniel D. and Lisa M. Casper Trust relating to portions of parcel number 592814-72507 located at 1618 Riverdale Avenue, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and accept temporary limited easement for the City of Sheboygan to consult, install, maintain, operate, and repair sanitary sewer. Alder Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to suspend the rules.
Any objections? Hearing none, please proceed.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Under discussion. City Engineer Jump, any additional comments?
Yeah, I just want to bring up the reason for the suspend and adopt for this one. An earlier Common Council resolution directed city staff to start the process of acquiring easements for the Southside Interceptor Sewer. This is the result of that, and we're just looking to keep the schedule moving and not delay the acquisition or the project.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this matter? All right, seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Nine ayes.
That is approved. Item 27, resolution number 482627 by Alders Close pursuant to the extraterritorial plat approval jurisdiction of the City of Sheboygan, approving the final plat of North Town subdivision in the town of Sheboygan. Alder Bors.
I move to adopt.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Under discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Nine ayes.
That is approved. That is approved. Next, item 28, General Ordinance Number 1, 2627 by Alders Bors, Close, Gravine, and Prilla, creating Section 105-8 of Municipal Code, establishing a temporary moratorium on the issuance of zoning and building permit approvals for data centers with greater than 10,000 square feet of floor area. Alder Gravine.
I move to adopt the ordinance.
Moved and seconded. Under discussion. Alder Prella.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to address the exceptions in the ordinance and pose that I know, the reasons of, I just want to make sure that some language, and I'm seeking contributions and feedback from the attorney, the city attorney. I just want to make sure that the interpretation of some of the exceptions are actually, what are those interpretations? What are the implications of the language that we have there under the exceptions? In particular, I am interested in the property entitlement applications filed prior to the effective date. So I would like to understand better what are the legal interpretation, what is that city attorney can tell us about what qualifies as a property entitlement application. Does that mean that, for example, if something is going through a rezoning or a lot has been looked at, for example, does that qualify as an entitlement application? How do we interpret that? Or what are the possible interpretations?
City Attorney, are you online?
I am. A property entitlement in this context is something where a property owner or someone who has a legal right to a property has applied to the city for permission to do something that permission is required in order to do. So that could be a building permit to, build on a vacant parcel or to renovate an existing parcel. It could be a zoning application. It could any number of property-related permissions that would need to be granted by the city in order to proceed is a property entitlement.
Thank you. So that means an action has been taken, an official action has been taken, a request, a permit, something like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, if that type of property entitlement application has been submitted to an adjacent municipality, it granted, and then that plot, so there has been a beginning of that application. Then the plot, the lot, the land get annexed to the city. I assume that that entitlement doesn't apply to the city of Sheboygan, but can you please confirm?
Correct.
So we would not abide by the use that has been granted on that land before the application, before the annexation, excuse me.
If a property owner receives permission from some other municipality to build on their land consistent with that municipality's regulations, then that property owner is subject to that municipality's regulations. If the property owner gets permission, gets started, and applies to annex into the city, they would have to come into compliance with the city's regulations. If a property owner is trying to annex into the city and develop their property in a use that's not consistent with the city's regulations, then you would be able to deny the annexation petition.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Alder Menzer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. I'm not sure who this goes to, possibly the city attorney. Section C of this resolution, I just have a question on the implications of it. The moratorium shall be in effect until 11:59 p.m. on the 365th day following the effective date, or until data center zoning regulations are adopted by the city and take effect, whichever is later. So my question is, we've talked a lot about, it's going to take a year or whatever, but this sounds like it could go more than a year because whichever comes later is the deciding factor of when this moratorium ends. Is that true? So it could be longer than a year.
Yes, and that language was, I verified with the sponsors of this document that was the desired language, because you may be more familiar with the whichever is sooner language, which is much more common. The preference for the whichever is later language was to allow the state time to develop statewide regulations. If the city were to be more efficient in our zoning regulations than the state is, then it would give us a little extra time to wait and see what the state rolls out.
Follow-up.
Is the state working actively on ordinances and rules regarding this?
In the last legislative session, multiple possible options were submitted for consideration, none passed. We'll have to wait and see what happens in this next session.
Thank you.
Alder Heidemann.
Thank you, Mayor. Moratorium. Now, I believe that's something that I guess the whole community wants. The Planning Commission voted 5-0 on it. I did watch the meeting, and I heard the comments from some of the people that were speaking, and they had some concerns about the ordinance in itself, as whether it has enough teeth in it or not, and evidently that's something we're going to be working on. But my impression with this whole situation was that I thought we were going to find and be presented more information on data centers and everything else before we got to this point. So are we jumping ahead of schedule before we get all the other the speakers that are going to come to us so we can make a decision on what we want to do with data centers? I was just a little uncomfortable that this came ahead. And one of the commission members made a statement that though we have a moratorium, what's prevent Plymouth, Kohler, any other community can have a data center, And the county has left us with no, you know, I mean, why wouldn't the county adopt a moratorium that would protect the city of Sheboygan? I don't understand that. That just makes zero sense to me to put it, you know, say, okay, we're going to do this for our citizens, but for the rest of the citizens of the county, who really cares? And I think the board's kind of not doing their work. They should have came out ahead of us so that we could have followed those guidelines. But again, I was under the impression that we were going to get a lot more information about data centers and everything else before we got to this place.
All right, thank you, Alder Heidemann. Alder Bremser.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did attend the City Plan Commission last week, and it was discussed that the option to extend the moratorium is a possibility if need be. So if the moratorium passes tonight as is, and it is decided that the city would like to extend the timeframe by 6 months at some point, extending it to an 18-month, can you confirm just how that process would go for the extension and also the timeframe that it would be needed to get that in place on time? I just want to make sure that we're making the right decision tonight. Thank you.
City Administrator?
Yes, that would just simply letting staff know we would draft an amendment to the existing ordinance and then take that back, or resolution, and taking that back to Plan Commission and then back to council for approval. So depending on when it falls, 2 to 3 weeks, roughly.
Yeah, we have to do a notice. So probably.
Yeah, with the notice amendment.
Take a month, at least a month.
A month. So with notice period for the amendment would be a month. So that would all have to fall in there, but relatively quick.
Okay, thanks. I just want to make sure that, you know, that we knew what the process would be. Just make sure that something doesn't sneak up on us and that we still have that time to extend that if we need to. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Alder Menzer?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also wanted to comment on a comment that was made during the Planning Commission, and I think it bears repeating that this resolution is somewhat weak. There isn't much bite to it, and I fear that if we pass this resolution as is, the only thing that we've done, I fear, is to incentivize a company to get creative in subverting the ordinance and to do in secret what we all want them to do in public. So, and this is not just my opinion, this actually comes from a couple citizens from the community as well that I've received emails from. So that is where my question came from as far as whichever is later. I would much prefer to see that whichever is earlier, to close that window, to decrease the chance of subverting this ordinance. I'm not against moratoriums. I'm not for data centers, neither necessarily. What I am against is not having a say in the documents that we're trying to push through, especially ones that don't have as much robust wording as could be from a more comprehensive discussion on the matter. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Menzer. Alder Gravine.
Hi, good evening. I just want to thank everybody for all the work that's been put into this moratorium. It's been a work in process for many months. And I think there's a misconception about a lot of it right this second. This is a measure to put in place to hold space so that we can update our zoning code and everything else. It doesn't have specifics for you know, all the different things that go into a data center, because that's not what it's intended for. That is what our zoning code is for. It is to make space so that we can do the work and update our zoning code to include this very complex industry. It also gives us space and time for the state to give us a little more guidance on how to approach a lot of this. It's been severely lacking, but I believe there will be more coming in the next session. And I also believe that this is the beginning step of having all the conversations about the pros and cons of data centers, what it means to have data centers that are good neighbors, what kind of data centers. We definitely don't want anywhere near any of our communities. All we can do is lead our charge for our city. We can't make decisions for other municipalities and force other municipalities to do other things. We can just take care of us at this point. And that's what this was put forth in hopes to do.
Thank you, Alder Gravine. Alder Bors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to piggyback on something that Alder Heidemann had shared, and I do think it's a good point. I know that many of us do support this moratorium and are pleased to see it up for vote tonight. However, it does not prevent our neighboring communities from moving forward with data centers because of lack of restrictions that exist in their code at this point in time. And while we don't have control over that, certainly, we are also constituents to our members of county board. And for those of us that would like to see these types of steps be taken within the county, I think that it would be great for us to reach out individually and reiterate that to our personal representatives as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Bors. Alder Kelly.
Just going back to Alder Perella's comment about the exceptions, I just wanted some clarification. Are there any data centers existing in Sheboygan right now that are the primary use is a data center, and are there any planned ones that are in the works?
Who wants to take that one? City Administrator?
So yes, there are existing what would be considered existing data centers in the city of Sheboygan. Right downtown, you have AT&T. They have what would be constituted under this as a data center because we don't have a real good definition. So essentially, they've got those operations. We want to make sure that our current ordinance or this ban doesn't impact them negatively. We don't have any data centers that are proposed that we're working with or anything, a hyperscale data center. We don't have anything like that, but our concern is making sure that we don't hurt our existing businesses. And that's why it's important to differentiate between primary use versus secondary use. We do have primary use. They've been here for generations in most cases and are very much a part of the community and good community stewards and partners, and we work with them daily. Looking at some of our larger businesses such as, Acuity or the hospital or the school district or even the city, there's areas or criteria that we could fall under these depending on how it's defined. And when we look at that for secondary use, so our primary use obviously for us is being a government or the school being a school. That secondary use is, it could meet the definition of what's in here, but it doesn't fall under that prohibition.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more cues, anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing and hearing none, this is a roll call vote.
Nine ayes.
That is approved. Item 29, General Ordinance Number 8, 2627 by Alders Heidemann Close, annexing territory to the city of Sheboygan. That will be referred to the Plan Commission. Next, we have a contemplated closed session. Alder Bors?
I move to convene in closed session under the exemption contained in Wisconsin Statute S. 19.51E for deliberation or negotiation of the investment of public funds where competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, to wit, consideration of TIF incentives for an anticipated development.
Moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Nine ayes.
All right, that is approved. We will take a few-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene in closed session, and we'll come back in open session eventually. All right, we will reconvene in open session. Alder Boris?
I move to reconvene in open session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Just call, yeah, call.
Alder Borst?
Aye.
Alder Decker?
Aye.
Alder Gravine? Aye. Alder Heidemann? Aye. Alder Menzer?
Aye.
Alder Perello? Aye. And we have 9 ayes.
All right, we're back in open session. All right, item 31. All right, we're back in open session. Alder Boris, is there a motion?
I move to authorize staff to proceed as discussed in closed session with respect to the development projects in the city of Sheboygan.
Second.
Moved in second, under discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. We've exhausted our agenda for this evening. Alder Boris, what's your pleasure?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 9:08. Good evening, everybody.